Welcome back to another episode of Cable Chatter. I'm your host, Blake Clevenger, and I'm here standing on the shoulders of the giants who have come before me, John Schmidt, Rick Clear, and Nick Poling, just to name a few. Cable Chatter's here to spread the word about the interesting events and interesting people that are in Randolph County, and just to show all the neat opportunities we have. Today we have a special interview for you. Our own Braden Hoggett is interviewing Ted Leahey, and this is for Veterans Day. We have a very interesting display of military uniforms up at the Union City Museum, and he's going to be going through those, discussing the connections in Randolph County to the various to veterans and the various foreign wars that we've had. And we're doing this as a school to honor the veterans, as well as make sure the students are aware of the sacrifices that have been made in years past, and to honor those sacrifices. But before we get to that, we have some community announcements. Every Monday throughout November, there'll be a music jam at the Farmland Community Center from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. On Friday, November 5th, is the first Friday of Union City. This is hosted by the Historical Preservation Society and the City of Union City, and will be at the Community Room in downtown Union City. On Saturday, November 6th, is the Fall Union City Lions Club Pancake Day. This will be a drive-through event happening from 6 a.m. to noon, so make sure you come down, drive by the Elks Club, get yourself a great breakfast. On Thursday, November 11th, the Veterans Day display of military uniforms will be open to the public in the Union City High School library from 3:30 to 5 p.m. On November 12th, the inaugural Coffee and Conversation will be occurring at the Beeson Clubhouse in Winchester from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. The topic will be marketing your business. On Friday, November 12th, there'll be an art show by Selena Burke titled All I Want Is This Chair. This will be the opening reception at the Arts Depot in Union City from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. On Saturday, November 13th, the annual Coats for Kids will be at the Ohio Valley Gas office on Franklin Street in downtown Winchester from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Wednesday, November 17th, will be the free movie at the Town Square Cinema for seniors from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Thursday, November 25th, is Thanksgiving Day. So happy Thanksgiving. And then following that is Black Friday. It's kind of amazing that Thanksgiving Day is already this close, but here we are. And I'll leave you to Braden Hoggett and Ted Leahey, and I want to thank all the veterans out there for their service.
Hello, and welcome to this special installment of the Cable Chatter. My name is Braden Hoggett, and I will be your host today. We kind of taken a special trip uptown to the Red Room here at Union City's Hotel Museum. It's kind of like the back room here. I am joined by Mr. Leahey today. Would you mind explaining a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I taught at the high school for 34 years. When I finished that degree of work, I ended up at Indiana University Bloomington and spent 12 years there. And for any of your students or families' kids that were in the ACP program, I eventually ended up the director of that. Then I came home. This was retirement number 2. I came home and I received a call from my friends in Bloomington, said, "Do you want to work at IU East?" And I was like, "Well, why are you calling me?" They said, "Well, IU East has put in the requirement of communications, and that's another background of mine also. And they need instructors." So I said, "Well, yeah, okay, I'll help them out." That was another 9 years. So anyway, that's just generally career-wise for me. In terms of interests in the community, I've always been involved with the Art Association of Randolph County and been very involved in landmarks with Indiana, the State Preservation Society. I was on the board of directors there for 2 terms and became very interested in our town in terms of its history, really based on the fact that we have had so many visits from Ball State because they see Union City as unique in terms of its architecture, in terms of like homes that we have a representation. I know when we're in town, we don't think about any of this, but we have a representation of almost every type of home, so that in the School of Architecture, they can come here and in 15, 20 minutes see almost every style of architecture. Whereas if they go to the city, they're going to have to go from one place to the next, to the next, to the next. So anyway, we formed the Preservation Society as an outgrowth of the work that was done by the Art Association of Randolph County. Betsy Jeffries was president at that time, and we acquired the railroad depot, which became the home for the Art Association. Well, when that project kind of got wrapped up, the city had slated the Kirschbaum building for demolition. And we thought, no, that shouldn't happen because it's part of the historic downtown district. So we formed the Preservation Society specifically to save the building. And from there, we've evolved into saving several different buildings, both on the Ohio side and the Indiana side. And where we are right now in the Red Room is, as you said, part of the old hotel museum. And we wanted to save this building because it was the original Branham Hotel that was built for the railroad men who worked building the rails to connect all of the rail systems through Union City. So, and the Red Room is used for small group meetings, and all of the furniture in here, which is the other amazing thing about the room, all of the furniture in here is Stickley Furniture. That company made all of this, but they use only the quarter sawn oak that comes from our Union City sawmill. Frank Miller Sawmill supplies the only wood that they use to build all this furniture. So that's kind of a background for the room.
Very cool, yes. And might I add, very comfortable furniture, I should say the least.
Yes.
Well, to kind of bring this back to kind of why we came today, it's a very special installment for the Cable Chatter because it's going to be hitting on Veterans Day.
Okay.
And Veterans Day is a very special day of the year. But for those who may not completely understand what Veterans Day is and like kind of what it is impacted in Union City, would you be able to kind of explain it for us?
Well, yes. Veterans Day was set up by our own government to honor the service of all of those who've given either their lives or their time to defend and protect this United States of America. And we have a rich history of being involved in helping other countries preserve their own systems of government as well. And so through our divisions of the military, we've been on the sea, in the air, and on land. Almost everywhere around the globe. And there was not a specific day set aside for veterans. And so November the 11th has become the day that we celebrate all veterans of the military who've served our country so faithfully.
Well, that's a fantastic way to explain it, definitely. I guess everybody knows, really, that you're very big and committed into our community. Would you be able to explain how you came to work with this new idea that you're coming up with for the students, but would you be able to hit on kind of how you came to be explaining here, me interviewing you here about Veterans Day?
Sure. Well, because the General Assemblies have kind of been on hold due to COVID, I worked with Mr. Jones at the high school, the history and government teacher, to come up with some sort of plan, with his assistance, of course, to celebrate Veterans Day. So we visited the museum because we have an extensive collection of uniforms representing all the different services. And they represent also the significant people from Union City that have been involved in the military throughout World War I all the way through to the present. So we decided that it would be a good idea then to take the uniforms, which normally have been displayed on the 4th of July when we do a veterans picnic. Preservation has done a veterans picnic probably for 15 years, open to the general public, but celebrating the veterans. Well, this year, once again, because of COVID, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to be inside or outside, and so the community room wasn't open to the public like it normally would have been. So when Mr. Jones and I were planning, we decided, well, that'd be a great way for people to see the uniforms again. They can come to the museum anytime and see them because they're on display in what we call our military room. But this way, students will be able to, from their classes, go down to the library. That's where we're going to situate them, and visit and find out a little bit about most of the people from Union City that have played significantly in the different wars.
Now, I know in the past, the students have usually gone to like this big thing down usually in our main gym where they kind of do like a presentation for Veterans Day. Now, I know that's very significant as it encompasses practically what Veterans Day is around the globe, but I really think that this new way that you guys have put together, you and Mr. Jones, putting into aspect what our people and community have done for us with the uniforms and everything like that. I think that's a wonderful idea, and I'm really looking forward to it as a student to go in and visit and
that's
look
what we
at the
want.
uniforms. Yes, very much so. Now, going along with the uniforms, would you be able to explain some of the significance behind some of them?
Oh yes, I'd be happy to. So we have a World War I uniform that belonged to Johnny Heenan, who was from the Ohio side, and he served faithfully in World War I. And we also have a trunk that came back from World War I, just as it was packed and sent home. The family donated it from Dr. Ruby to us, and every detail of it is what he used while he was involved in the war. He served in overseas also, and there are pictures we have pictures that were taken at the end of that war with the celebrations that were going on. So then we have World War II represented. My father was very involved in the war in a way that most people weren't aware of until 1994. Dad's company were stationed from Seattle all the way down to the bottom of California, and his company trained civilians to watch the skies at night and to spot incoming foreign planes. And also there was a unique thing that happened that again wasn't revealed until 94. Japan had figured out a way to send incendiary bombs by balloons that they created, and they traveled on the air currents and landed all along the shoreline from Seattle all the way down. Interestingly, in school at one point we used to do a day that was set aside where each of the faculty would teach a course that wasn't an academic course. All right. And so I was doing one talking about my dad's involvement in the war, because after those were marked and charted, his company would go in and defuse the bombs that had landed on the shoreline. Yeah. Well, I was explaining that these incendiary bombs were attached to balloons that floated on air currents. And Mieko Hall, who was working in the cafeteria at that time, came to that session because she was a war bride. And she said, "Mr. Leahey, I have to tell you something." I said, "Yes, Mrs. Hall." And she said, "I was in those chemistry classes that made those bombs. And the bombs were made, the balloons, I'm sorry. The balloons were made from the silver foil of gum wrappers and cigarette packs." Oh, wow. And those were made by all of the chemistry classes throughout Japan, and they were all it was all figured out how that would happen. Yeah. So anyway, Dad trained a company of men, and he would move down the shore or the coastline with his own company. They'd recruit civilians again, and another troop would come in and they'd train them to to defuse the bombs, and he moved all the way down, as I say, to the bottom of California.
Very, very, very interesting. I know for a fact, actually, one of the many uniforms you have here, I think is one of my favorites, is the co-pilot of Air Force One.
Okay.
Do you mind hitting on that a little bit? Because
Sure.
I find that very interesting. Because I mean, I knew him personally.
All right.
Well, I knew his wife. I know his wife personally because my grandparents are good friends with him, and
All right.
it was just dumbfounding to me. But I'll let you kind of explain.
Okay, well, once again, the interesting thing is that, and we'll come back to one for World War II after I do this, for a specific reason. Mr. Ford, who was mayor of Union City, was a co-pilot on Air Force One when President Nixon was president of the United States. He did the international tour of China and all of that Asian territory.
Yes.
So he accompanied the presidential entourage to all of the formal dinners. So the uniform that you're going to see will not look like traditional uniforms, but it is his dress uniform that he had to wear to those dinners.
Very cool.
So once again, who would think that little Union City had somebody that was a co-pilot on Air Force One?
Exactly. It's crazy to me.
Back to World War II for just a minute. One of the uniforms will be a trench coat, and the trench coat was part of the female uniform.
Yes.
Those were cousins of ours, the Murphy family. The three sisters were in the Army Nurses Corps that formed at Indiana University, and they traveled all across Europe during World War II. They were on the beaches of Normandy. They were at the Battle of the Bulge. They moved across France, setting up triage units for wounded soldiers, and into Belgium. And at the end of the war, and all of them were injured. They all had Purple Hearts, and there were two of them who were captains, and they ended up being invited to travel home in General Patton's limousine, so that they were on tap to attend to any of the survivors of the Bataan Death March that they were bringing home. So that's another interesting thing. And we think of women just recently joining the military, but that happened in World War I and World War II.
Very big things, and it's crazy that all these people are from Union City. It's crazy the amount of significance that was brought through into the military from Union City, just a small town on the border of Indiana, Ohio. It's wild to me.
But it's interesting in view of the purpose of the day. Union City is such a tiny microcosm of all of the people that served their country in the same ways.
Wow. Kind of building off of what you were talking about with the uniforms, they're all here on display here at the museum. Would you be able to kind of give us a way at how those came to be in the museum?
Well, once we decided to turn this into a museum, because it was an empty building that we wanted to save, and we had to have a purpose and a cause for it. And at that time, Alan Heiss, who was another very significant person in the war effort during Vietnam, he had received money for a railroad museum, but it hadn't happened. And he saw, and his committee saw what we did with the Kirschbaum building, and said that if we would promise to make a section of this museum a railroad room, he'd donate that money to us. Well, as a result of that, people were aware that it was going to turn into something, and so people kept handing stuff to us readily, hoping that it would be, it could be incorporated into the museum. One of the main things is we have all sorts of things that represent the school, represent significant people in the community, businesses and industry. In fact, we have so many items that have been given to us. We maintain a museum on the second floor of the Kirschbaum building also that is for all manufacturing, basically.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. So we were fortunate because Judy Reagan, who's now passed, of course, was dedicated to collecting and sorting and cataloging all of the materials as they came in. We're at a point where we really can't accept anymore simply space-wise.
Yeah.
But we tried to make the museum represent the history of Union City.
Very cool. Now, for someone like me, when is the museum open? So I personally would be able to come in, look at everything.
We have maintained a schedule of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But what has happened is that's all done by volunteers. And a couple of our volunteers who've been very faithful all through this. Judy Reagan was one of them. She was here almost every day. So we dropped back to the days that we could manage. Well, now one of the faithful persons that kept the museum rolling has been injured. And so that recovery is going to kind of determine when it's open. But basically, we want to maintain that schedule of Wednesday through Saturday. And so if anybody out there wants to volunteer, we'll sign the dotted line.
Well, building off the community stuff that we were just talking about with the museum, I know the students are having that presentation or kind of showing of the uniforms out at the library. I know we've talked about this off camera, but I'd like for you to kind of explain it on camera about the possibility of the community coming in and viewing the uniforms out at the library.
Yeah, there will be a couple evenings, I should say following school.
Yes.
Now, it won't be late in the evening. But from the end of school around 3:30, most students are cleared out by then. If anybody wants to come and see these uniforms, if they have not been to the museum and seen them, I believe it will be on Thursday and Friday. You might want to double check those dates on TV, on K.I.S S, to be sure. But from the time of the ending of school until about 5 o'clock, dinner time, if there's anybody in the community that wants to come in, they'll come in the main doors of the high school. And the library will be immediately there on the right-hand side as you come in. And they're welcome to come and look at the display also.
And I very much so encourage it also. It's going to be a fantastic experience. Now, I know not all the students are going to have all this information that you've given me about all the uniforms. Is there going to be something there besides yourself to like answer questions and stuff like that? Is there anything that they're going to be receiving to kind of give them some background information about it?
We have a general one-pager on each one of the uniforms and the people that those uniforms represent that students can pick up. And the same for anybody that should come in from the community. They'll be there, and it just tells a little story of that person's involvement in the war, the military, and their dedication to our country. And I think another interesting thing, I had mentioned the women's uniforms. You have had recent graduates, females, who have been involved in the military. You want to mention?
I only actually know of a couple. I know Sarah New went into the military, and she graduated a few years back. And then I actually know of a one that's trying to go in currently. I know Madison Garrett was interested in the military for some time, and she graduated this past year. And then I actually have a couple of friends that are in my current class that are hoping to go into the military as of right now. So that's very exciting for them. It's a big opportunity for everybody, but it's fantastic to see the representation of both men and women that have come from Union City. Fantastic.
And they will continue to create their own history for Veterans Day.
I love this conversation that we were able to have with you today. I thank you for allowing us to make time with you to come out here and create this video about Veterans Day for everybody.
My pleasure.
And so thank you very much.